Welcome to Storytelling. This week is the first part of two very special episodes. We're stepping onto the pitch with football. We're talking about why the game has such a special way of bringing people together, even when the rivalries run deep. We'll also dive into the latest on Manchester City's legal saga and, of course, throw in our predictions on who's going to lift the Premier League trophy this season. But I'm not alone for this one. I'm joined by three incredible guests, each representing their team with unmatched passion. First up is Tony Okeke, a lifelong Manchester United fan who's seen it all and never holds back. Then we've got Gary Taylor, Tottenham through and through, bringing his sharp insights and endless hope for Spurs. And last but certainly not least, Darrell Irwin, our Liverpool expert whose love for the Reds runs deep and whose football knowledge runs even deeper. And then there's me, trying probably not very successfully to stay neutral. And for you Arsenal and Crystal Palace supporters out there, don't worry, I've got your back. Hello, Gary, Tony and Darrell, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
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 Guys, football has a way of bringing people together from different backgrounds. How has supporting your club helped you connect with others, whether locally or globally? And let's go to Gary first.
I think in this world, everybody needs a release from their day-to-day job, family, responsibilities. And when you do go football, as you rightly said, you meet people of all different ages, all different walks. We've got the passion, enthusiasm, and I think for mental health, it's the best thing ever to connect with people. You can hear the stories from how it was 30 years ago, and you can hear from the younger generation what it means to them. And I think it's a great way of everyone coming together, embracing football. Yes, there's banter, and the banter is absolutely hilarious. How people make up these songs, I never know. But bringing people together is the most important thing to take out the stress, because I just feel that's what we need in today's society, is everybody needs their release. But on the flip side, the negativity part of it is it's very expensive. And it's outpricing people so much, not just because of getting a ticket, but actually just to travel to the games when it costs to travel. But at the end of the day, when I have the odd free ticket, I always ask people that I think I should invite in an hour of need to get them to come, to release them from their issues, shall we say. And there's always people, everybody's got issues in their life, some more than most, and that's what we have to try and do, is come together as a community, as a team, and help people.
Thank you. Darrell?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the reason why a lot of the clubs started off in the first place was to be just that, to actually give young men something to do as an outreach into the community. So a lot of the clubs that we all support or, have been following for many years, if you look at the origins of the club, that's ultimately the DNA. We get a great deal of enjoyment of the actual game itself or whatever, but it was originally designed to get, guys a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. Manchester United was, for the railway workers, for example. Liverpool was started by a vicar, and then Everton started out of that club. So when you look at the origins, you realise that football does have a great way of bringing communities together, just for the game. But even like last week, my son and his mates went to a local game and they were watching it. They got some chairs and they were sat on the sideline. And at the end of the game, they started interviewing all the players for a laugh, and it's just like, it's added another depth to where we live because they've been out there and they've connected with people. So I think football on multiple levels is a great bridge builder. Do you know what? I went to Sicily and I was there for 10 days and there was a football tournament. I couldn't speak a word of Italian, but I somehow connected with all of them just on the aspect of football, started mentioning Juventus and things like that. And then just playing in the football tournament. We actually won and I got a nickname called Gladiator, which was quite cool. So I enjoyed that. That's how it does. It just breaks barriers down. And I think for me, it's a great way to get people into sport. And, it's not always easy in terms of costs, and even grassroots is getting harder and harder. But, for me, it's a language that, brings people together, whether it's online, like you're playing FIFA on the computer, or whether you're talking or about it, or ultimately you're going to watch people or even playing the sport. It's a great way to bring people together. It always has been and always had. And to be fair, I don't think there is a better fitness tool out there than football. Football fit is a different level. So that's
Thank you. Tony?
I totally agree so far with what's been said. I mean, I'm of Nigerian heritage, and football was like a second family to us growing up. I grew up in the times of hooliganism and the associated madness that went with football at the time in the 70s and 80s. Years on, we can go to games in relative peace. Football is global and watched by at least a global audience. Also, in accordance with that, the stadium is filled with all nationalities, all sorts of people. An example of how football can bring people together is, as Debbie mentioned, I'm a United fan. I sit in the lower west stand, which is just below the Stretford end. But all around me are different people, lawyers, doctors, heritages are different. I've got a Spanish, Italian, I've got a Congolese, a Ugandan, etc. around me. But if any of us was to miss a game or miss two games, everyone would start asking, oh, has anyone seen Tony? Has anyone seen Andrew? Has anyone seen Claire? Are they okay? They would try and ring you just to make sure that you're okay, right? And this is because football to many is like a second family, if not a first family. A bond and a friendship has been formed, even if it's only for football only. I also agree that the costs of going to matches have become extremely prohibitive to the average working class person. The cost of going to a match now not only feels prohibitive, but it actually feels like we're being extorted. Football back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s to an extent, used to be the preserve of the working class. It was a cheapish day out. Take the family, take the kids, go down to the game, watch a game, come back, everybody's happy. Now, match tickets are at a price that it's a Christmas treat or a birthday treat. Aside from that, I don't know, go on teletext, or I'm showing my age there, or BBC Sports News to get the results.
So we've talked about some of the positives and some of the negatives in terms of the costing and maybe it not being as open for communities as it once was, because the cost is prohibited now. But one thing I want to talk about, because this is something that on an average day, we probably wouldn't put Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool and Man United in the same room at the same time. So let's talk about football rivalries. But rivalry, can this lead to tension? Or do you think it unites people in some way also? Because I think it's united us in a way in terms of this podcast being put together. Let's start with Darrell on this one.
I think at the end of the day, if you want to play football, you need an opposition. That's the bottom line. So you want to play a game of sport, there has to be something that you've got to beat. There's got to be an opposition there. And I think for me, if you keep that perspective that there's always a winner and loser, and at the end of the day, whatever goes on the pitch goes on the pitch, and you can shake your hands at the end of the day, and and then live to fight another day. Then ultimately, that's what it's about. I think it can mean too much, if that makes sense, where it becomes, I get it even now, and I'm sure it's the same for all of us here, that if our team loses, particularly if it's a 12:30 kickoff, the weekend's not as glitzy and as glam as it was. You kind of still got that thing in your head going, well, let's ruin the weekend. And I think you got to get that into perspective, because it's like you got family and all these other wonderful things, and you're letting that result dominate. But I think it's to understand at the end of the day, it's a game, and then there has to be a winner and loser. That's what we all love about it. I think we're both sets of fans are disappointed when it's a draw. And I think that game in itself, it's all about winning, losing, and learning, because if you play the sport, and you got to learn how to win, but you also got to learn how to lose graciously. And I know we can be horrible losers, but at the end of the day, someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. And if you look at the perspective of the Premier League, let's say, only one team can win it, and that's it. There's another 19 people that are going to be upset. So the reality is only one team can win, but it's the competition, it's the hope, it's the fun, it's the last minute equalizers. And I think maybe certainly at a more of a lower league level, they're not expected to win all the time, so they actually appreciate the game more, I think. Whereas we sometimes get caught up in if we don't win the Premier League, it's just pointless. Well, yeah, we all want to win it, but it doesn't always happen like that. And teams run in cycles as well, so you could be enjoying the game for 5 years because your team's winning everything, but eventually that cycle will change and someone else will come on the scene. And occasionally you get a surprise like Leicester, which makes the game great. And I think where we're at with the game at the moment, and I think that's why a lot of the other 19 clubs are looking at what's going on with Man City, because it feels a little bit like, a farmers league at the moment. So no matter what we do, it's the rules are being rewritten, and one team seems to be benefiting. And so, yeah, I think if they don't rule correctly, I know we touched on it earlier, if they don't rule correctly, I could see the advocacy for the big clubs to say, well, we're going to leave the Premier League. And I think that might be the catalyst to bring it to a head. So you could rule in their favour. At Man City, we keep all our titles, but you might be finding the big established clubs going, now we're going to break away. So it's going to be an interesting few months. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you. Gary?
Echo a lot of Darrell's comments. And like anything, there's always rules. But like anything, everybody in life wants to break rules, and they find ways to break rules. It's just like people don't want to pay tax, and they're trying to find ways to break tax, and then they got caught up. And then, as Darrell said, it's a cycle. And I think the rules now need to come in to break Man City's cycle, because otherwise, as he said, it's going to go, well, there's no point really playing football this year in the Premier League because we're never going to win. And everybody wants to, obviously, to win. It doesn't take the enjoyment out of the game, because obviously Tottenham, Man City hate playing Tottenham because we're their bogey team. So it doesn't. So we look forward to the games, and when you have got that passion and belief, and when you are at a Champions League game and you're beating Man City and they get a goal disallowed in VAR in the last minute, I mean, you can't replace that in life. It's all about memories, the passion. We can talk about games 10 years ago, 15 years ago, etc. Oh, remember, we're playing Leicester. Do you remember when we went out on the booze, etc.? Isn't that club till 4 o'clock? That's bringing back all the memories. Life is about memories, and if people don't capitalise on them memories, what is life all about? But the biggest issue is what Tony said, is it's not the young people anymore because they can't afford it. I mean, if I went through every penny I spent in the last 2 games, it's just ridiculous. We've been to Budapest and Brighton, and yes, the great thing about football is always have the game at the last thing of the weekend, because it's either going home happy or sad. So the good thing is, previous weekend we went happy, got home at 1:00 in the morning from Man United, not saying nothing, and then coming back from Brighton was probably the worst thing, absolutely, ever. And it is, and you come in to work on Monday so depressed, but you go next. And like, you've got a winner and loser, and the great thing about losing is you look at why you lost, you analyse it, and you can only move forward. It's just like, you've got to take the positive out of it. But yes, we've lost, but why did we lose? What can we do better? Everyone makes mistakes, and you just learn from it. That's just part of life and growing up. But I think, yeah, I mean, Budapest and Brighton, you're not going to get no change out of £800 or £1,000 if I did it up. But that's if you're in European competitions, that's it. And there's obviously, when your club is in Europe, that's what happens. At least we saved some money last year because you wasn't in it. But this year, yeah, you notice the difference. And what you obviously don't know, I follow England as well. So we've got 2 games this week, England. Why they don't just not play them different from Wembley? It's all right for me. But why don't they play them in Manchester and all the clubs? Give them extra money. I'd still go. I've been to Middlesbrough, I've been to Sunderland, I've been to all the games. Why don't they break it up? Where do they? I think they played in Leeds, didn't they? Yeah, Leeds. Oh, and the community love it. You can see the kids got all the banners. But then you go to the next. So the game, obviously, on this week is Thursdays at Wembley. But the game on Sundays in Helsinki. If you're a Tottenham fan, how can you afford that after that? Literally impossible. And it's all to do with the ticketing. It's a nightmare. They leave it to the last minute, same as Premier League, and everyone, when they books their trains, the rail companies put the price of the tickets up, and that's it. And it's all to do with football money, TV coverage. But that's all saying. But no, it is. You can buy the experience.
Tony.
I totally agree with what's been said before me. But what I will say, for example, I've got 4 season tickets. 3 are constantly active. We do home, away, Europe, whatever. If I was to actually think about how much money I've spent and the time and effort put into it, I'd probably have a cardiac arrest or arrest myself for some kind of robbery, because I don't really know how I've managed to keep it up. So that said, I totally agree with what's been said in terms of cost and the ability to fund our desire and enjoyment of watching live football. So there's not really a lot I can say towards that. In relation to the City situation, I believe that they should be tried in a court of law or in the arbitration tribunal. And if found guilty, the kitchen sink should be thrown at them for 2 reasons, Ron. Firstly, the accusations that have been made against them for a while, it's a long time coming. When the accusation was originally made against them, they fought it. They could have, at that point, accepted that they'd done some wrongdoing, just like Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Everton, mitigated their wrongdoing with circumstantial evidence and taken whatever the punishment was, and maybe appealed the punishment based on the fact that maybe they would argue that it was too severe. However, the problem we've got here is, what is an appropriate sanction? or what would be deemed to be appropriate to most people or most parties that have an interest in this situation. And I think that the problem is, no matter what fine has been previously commented, whatever the fine is it 500 million, 750 million, 1 billion? It's a drop in the ocean to the owners of Man City. So, in my personal opinion, I think what the FA will do is sit down, come to a conclusion where they fine them as much as they can possibly fine them, deduct them maybe 30, 40 points, and give a speech or a spiel about that's the biggest fine in football in history. It's the biggest point deduction, because ultimately it's about money. Given how good the City team is at this particular moment in time, a 40-point deduction, even a 50-point deduction, given that they're scoring on average 80 plus points a season, it just means that they'll finish towards the bottom of the table, but they'll still be in the Premiership. Or worst case scenario, they get relegated down to the Championship. They'll be back next season. The FA will argue that the punishment that they've given or handed out to City is proportionate to the offence that they've been found guilty of. And actually, that the fine, what it does for grassroots football, women's football, and the pyramid, the fine is far more beneficial than banishing them to, I don't know, the Vauxhall Conference League.
So for anyone listening and they're wondering why we've moved from the subject talking about Man City is currently involved in a significant legal battle with the Premier League. They're facing 115 charges related to financial misconduct. And we're all waiting to find out what the outcome of those charges will be and how long this legal case will last. I just want to ask you guys, what do you think the outcome of that case will have on the Premier League in general and on your own clubs in general? Darrell, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think from an outcome perspective, it's the punishment. What punishment are they going to get? Are they going to strip titles? Which with the betting scandals that went on in Italy, Juventus was stripped everything. Are they going to be that harsh? And I think they are naive to think that if they give them a few points deductions and a big fine, that the other big clubs are going to say, well, that's great, we'll carry on then. I do think it will instigate the breakaway again. And I mean, that's maybe what they're underestimating. Before all that happened, there was a breakaway talked about. And because it wasn't part of the pyramid system or whatever, fine. But then you look at they've been seen at, down on the street and having certain conversations. It looks like there's been everything to protect for that to happen. But it's not done properly. The repercussions are not just on I think it's on the Premier League itself. Because ultimately, when you're deducting points off of Everton and you're deducting points off of Forest and and Leicester, it's happening really quickly. And then this team is, it's been going on for so long. And when UEFA openly admit that they believe they were 100% guilty and they were beat by being tied up in finances and legals, they said they're guilty. They've come out and said they were 100% guilty. We just didn't have good enough lawyers and it went on too long. And because it went too long, a lot of the charges were elapsed. I think it's the repercussions in football. So I think for me, of course, my club would love a few more titles and, losing by the odd point here and there is great. But I think it's more, it's a much bigger repercussion here. If you're inflating prices, how can you say that, the Emirates is worth 60 million and as a Champions League club and then not being a Champions League club, you're charging 400 million for the same sponsorship deal. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think that's the bone of contention that's being fought. And I know there was something that came out yesterday regarding it. If they can win on that point, that's pretty much the rest of it collapses. So yeah, that's the repercussions. It's the repercussions on the game because they've gamed it, because they've got money and they've gamed the game. And I think that's the sad thing about it. I don't mind losing fair competition. Even when Blackburn won it, when Blackburn spent ridiculous amounts of money and won it, it is what it is. It seemed fair. This doesn't. They're rewriting rules. And when you've got someone like UEFA saying they've been gamed as well, then you got to sit up and take notice. So for me, it's not just about the clubs; it's the repercussions on the game. That's what I'm more concerned with. They've done a tremendous work. If you see what they've done behind the scenes with the community, the training grounds, and all the wonderful stuff. But of course, you would be if you got billions and you're rewriting the rules. If everyone had that, then I'm sure they would do the same. So it's almost like you're trying to sports wash the corruption afterwards to say, look, all the good we've done with it. But I think it is damaging to the game. For me, if Man City won it the right way and did what they did, and I think the comparison I get is Newcastle. They're 10 times richer, and the rules have been rewritten to stop them doing the same thing. So that just goes to show that they've gamed the whole system, and that's the repercussions for me. That they've got some incredible lawyers, and they've stitched everybody up to make sure that it's an unfair competition.
And it shouldn't be unfair. That's the thing. I just think that it shouldn't be one rule for one club and different rules for everyone else. It should be the same across the board. And perhaps there's too much money in football right now as well.
But I just say, look, if you want to play the game of who's got the most money wins, which is what Manchester City done, allow Newcastle to do the same. Because that's competition. But that's what's not. They've literally changed the law to then stop Newcastle doing the same thing. That's why I think it's unfair as it currently stands.
Okay. Gary?
Very difficult subject. Obviously, Daniel Levy's got a completely different motive. He wants to make a club balance the books. Money comes in from sponsorship. Yeah, that sponsor. I've got a good friend who's got £1 billion. Let's just put £1 billion in. But obviously, from Tottenham's point of view, it's the most successful, well-run stadium to make a profit. And that's his ethos, and that's what he wants. And if every club had that at the start, then Tottenham might be in a different position. They might have actually won something. But at the moment, as Darrell said, they've got the best lawyers in the world. If they wrote a number on how much in legal costs they spent, it's probably 500 million. It's probably an obscene amount of money that people can't even imagine how much the cost is. And the legals, you're not talking a lawyer on £300 an hour, £1,000 an hour. You're talking unbelievable. It's like technology. If I said to you, where's technology done in 5 years' time, you wouldn't be able to tell me. It's like that with Man City. They've spent so much money on it.
Do you think a fine will make any difference to Man City?
I think it's a fine. How much? If they said £1 billion, they find some Arab to. But I think the only way was to say to them, "Okay, look, we're not. The money won't affect them. What will really hurt? Well, look, let's put them in the Conference League. Start them again, and let's see how the Premier League evolves without Man City." I mean, it's so hard to think of a solution, and everyone's going to have a different viewpoint. But if you said, "Okay, look, let's start them in the Conference League," and you know how many seasons it's going to take them to get through, and we can see then the Premier League might evolve and they might change the rules and things will adapt. But at the moment, money talks. Money will always buy things. That's how the world goes round. It's who's going to be bought, and that's it. And it's the same as FIFA years ago. You get into FIFA. Who said once you're in FIFA, you're good. Anything goes. And one of my friends did the app for the World Cup in 2014. I met FIFA people, and it's a completely different world. It's who you know, etc. It's a club, and you're never done a break in. Doesn't matter what you say, they've always got lawyers, and you'll get blocked. It's as simple as that. But I think Tony have a say about it. But I think the thing about it is for the game to evolve and the Premier League to evolve, stick them in the Conference League. And basically then you've got 5 years of whatever, many years of Man City not winning. And you'll see where the land lies, and hopefully it'll be a level playing field.
We've reached half-time in our discussion. There's so much more to cover, but for now we'll pause the conversation. In our next podcast episode, we'll pick up right where we left off, diving deeper into the strategies, memorable moments, and the future of the game. If you'd like to share your comments on what you've heard so far, please get in touch at debbiewilliamspodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for part 2 as we continue our football journey.